It was actually the New Democrats that raised the specter of climate change 25 years ago in Parliament, and we've been fighting to get action by the governments in power ever since then. I'm proud to say that the New Democrats had passed through Parliament this June the Climate Change Accountability Act that imposes binding caps over a time period in keeping with the Valley commitments. Climate change is an issue that is unlike other pollution-related issues or water-related issues. What it really goes to the crux of our economy. And the longer we delay in taking action, and we have delayed for 25 years, the more expensive it's going to be. And it's also hurting our international credibility. And so we've come up with a very economically sensible plan to actually impose the obligation on the major emitters, which is 50% of greenhouse gases, to take the money from the permit system and give that back to people to retrofit their homes, to build rapid transit and so forth, so that people can contribute to reducing climate change. But first and foremost, we must concentrate on the major emitters. But frankly, if you were to balance off the use of technologies such as carbon sequestration with converting our economy, most of it needs to be in converting the economy. Right now in Alberta, a lot of you may have heard a couple of days ago or last week, the Auditor General of Alberta severely chastised the Alberta government for relying for the majority of its reductions on a technology that isn't even proven yet. And for the other quarter or a third, there's absolutely no plan. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to impose legal obligations on the major emitters, that's the major polluters, to actually reduce their greenhouse gases. To tell you the truth, a lot of technologies are actually developed in the world. The problem is we don't have the political will to actually make industry employ those. And that's what I have 35 years experience doing. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the money from the sale of those permits and we're going to reinvest it in conservation. The big push has to be for conservation. So we'll do that for money in more public transit, in retrofitting people's homes, and in also giving money to incent actually using the technologies that we develop. Thank you. The New Democrats take a slightly different approach than the other parties. Our approach is it's time to hold the federal government accountable so that when we actually transfer our tax dollars to assist students, to provide for research, to support universities and colleges, that the federal government be held accountable. And we have tabled in Parliament, and we will table again, an act which actually requires that the federal government account for how those transfers were spent, and the provinces account to the federal government. We believe that there needs to be a bigger package, though. It's not just tuition costs, and it's not just the cost of books. It's also rent costs, it's your transit costs, childcare, if you already have a young family. And so we've put forward a budget and a package that's actually going to make it affordable for everybody to go back to school. Everyone should have the right to upgrade their education. We are going to provide a $1,000 grant to all undergrads who qualify for student loans. We're going to put a lot more money into research, but our priority is going to be training more medical staff, particularly nurses and doctors, and to make sure that they can provide everybody access to health care. When I ran the first time and I kicked off my campaign, I kicked it off with my motto, and that is, if you elect me, you're not sending me to Ottawa, you're bringing the federal government back to Alberta. That's exactly the reason why I'm running. I've been fed up for 35 years that slowly the federal government has disappeared from Alberta. And so that's why I'm running, and I intend to balance off putting just as much time in the constituency as I would in Ottawa. What I'm going to do is to try to bring all those parliamentary committees to Alberta so that we can voice our views, and that it just isn't Central Canada that has a voice.
Okay.
Well, actually, our platform says that sometime by the end of 2009 we should pull out in a safe way. We heard the British military today announce that it's a completely unwinnable war. And, you know, we can't take and make an opinion. That's what the military in Britain have said. There are a lot of officials in Canada that are starting to admit that. The past Prime Minister, Mr. Harper himself, said that we will pull out for sure in 2011 no matter what. So the question is, you know, do we continue to sacrifice the lives of young Canadian men and women for a war that can't be won? Or do we instead shift over and you know, have our military serving a different purpose and perhaps in another country and supporting Europeans or other forces that will come in to protect the delivery of aid? I'm actually appalled that anyone who suggests that it's a question of balance of interests. It's clear and simple to our party. When it comes to human rights, they apply to everyone. We find it absolutely reprehensible, and we have spoken so in the House of Commons, that everybody who is a Canadian should be treated equally. And absolutely, Omar Khadr should come back to Canada. We're the only, this is the only country where there's a foreign national who is still imprisoned in Guantanamo Bay, and it's an absolute embarrassment to Canada as a nation. So, in the world, you're either a democracy or you're a tyranny. And we can't go out into the world and accuse others of not following the rules of human rights if we're not going to practice what we speak. So we have to come to the table with clean hands. He should come home. You're talking about the Security and Prosperity Partnership, and there's also the TILMA, which has been proposed among the provinces. And essentially what we're doing is we're inventing a form of government that's outside our Constitution. That's the definition of a democracy. The definition of a democracy is you operate by the rule of law. And the rule of law means that you elect the officials in a transparent election, and those people elected develop what the rules are in a transparent process, and your government is governed by those rules. And what's happened with the invention of this SPP, as it's called, is we've got the Premier of Alberta and the Prime Minister of Canada meeting with their counterparts in the United States and Mexico and striking deals behind closed doors with senior officers of industry. Our trade critic has already been meeting with the opposition trade critics of the United States and Mexico, and we already have an agenda of how we're going to try to undo the SPP. There's a false rumor going around being spread by various parties that we want to tax corporations more heavily. It's an absolute lie. What we're saying is, let's hold corporate taxes at where they are. The Liberals first initiated this reduction in corporate taxes from 29% down to 22%. The Harper government has now reduced it down to, I think it's 19%. What we're saying is that if we're elected in the next budget, halfway through 2009, we simply bring it back to 22%. If you look at the comparison of corporate taxes around the world, and if you combine the federal and provincial taxes and average those out, we're already well below the United States and most of the European nations. So we are not heavily taxing corporations. We're saying that this is not the time where we should be taking huge amounts of our tax dollars and giving them to major profit-making corporations, the banks and the major corporations. There are lots of other incentives for investment in their education, good health care, and a clean environment, and investment will come to Canada. I don't see any oil companies leaving Alberta soon. Yeah, we basically have two choices. I mean, do we want to continue down the path that the previous Liberal and current Conservative government have taken us and what the Bush regime have done? The last thing we need to be doing is putting more of our tax dollars towards the banks and the major corporations. Instead, what our plan is to take a large portion of that money and to put it towards targeted industries to incent jobs and work. We need to be putting money into helping people reduce their costs. Right now in the Edmonton, City Council has announced a 4% increase in taxes over the next 5 years. Well, people can't afford that. We need to be helping people to retrofit. We need to be providing more public transit. We need to be giving people choices. But basically, we have to be serving families right now because it's the families that are suffering in this economic crisis, not the banks and the big corporations.